you aren't logged into Pear Deck, make sure you go to UTDJJ. Okay. So the question was posed, what was Darwin's ship's name? And hopefully y'all didn't have to look it up. Yeah, I know you remembered it from last year. What do we get? Hims Beagle, HMS Beagle. Yep. Okay, what are we answering? I'm lost. That's an honest response, I suppose. The Santa Maria. Just kidding, the Pinta. No, really, it was the Beagle. Yes, the bagel. Yep. That is that's like an entrepreneur mind right there. If I were to open a bagel shop, it would not be like Broadway bagels. It would be the HMS bagel. Yes. And like 3 people would get it as they drove by. It would be like some molecular biologist would just be laughing as they drive by. And the ship, the boat, right? The beagle, woof, woof, evolution. Yeah, the beagle. Actually, he didn't even know what he was going to discover when he took off. He just knew he didn't want to be a doctor. He was a little scared of blood, didn't want to cut things open. So looking at the history of evolutionary thought, this is AP Biology, so we will not, beat around evolution. We're just going to talk about it, okay? And we're going to discuss it. And there's no real room for debating it in a theology versus biology way because we're in science class, right? So we'll leave that to the non-scientists of the world. So in here, we'll just talk about science. So prior to Darwin, the view of nature was determined by deep-seated beliefs held to be intractable truths rather than experimentation and observation. So he was really upset by that. He said, well, we just believe a lot of things just because we're told to believe them, like the Earth is the center of the universe. We know now that's ridiculous, but back in the day, that's what everybody just believed. Now, biologists had slowly began to accept various ideas of evolution, like species changing through time. But that was a pretty select group of people. We've learned this before. This was not the general population. Now, evolution is the unifying principle of biology. It is the central dogma that DNA changes from every generation to the next. And because of that, it holds the whole biological study together. That's why it's one of the big ideas. In every chapter, you're supposed to tie that chapter to evolution. Because, and I don't think we stress this enough in our regular biology class, it is why we're still here today, or why any life is on the planet today. If things were not able to change to an ever-changing environment, they would be extinct, and we wouldn't have anything on Earth. So evolution is that unifying principle, and it explains the unity and diversity of life. And so a lot of people ask me the question, if you believe in evolution, it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. I don't have to. I have science to show me it's true. And because we know that evolution is true in science, we look at it and we say, well, I can't believe there's not more diversity on the planet. Because really, there is less than 1% here today that has been here before. That means the diversity we see right here on planet Earth is less than 1% of all the different species that have been here. So think about how small our diversity is compared to everything that has been here throughout different, let's say, eras or periods, and which you guys just did a little lab over that. So similarities between living things reflect recent common ancestry. And that's what we're going to be looking at, is that adaptation from one to the next. And dissimilarities between living things reflect ancient common ancestors. So we can talk about things in microevolution at a very small scale, how you're different than your mom and dad. And then we can talk about things like macroevolution, where we look at species actually changing into a new species, right? Or branching off and becoming a new subspecies. So in the mid-18th century, the influences were the taxonomy, where it matured during the mid-18th century. Linnaeus, we talked about the Linnean system, binomial nomenclature, right? Let's see who can do it. Binomial nomenclature. Please list the order of classification just with the first letter of each. Let's see if you have your, from top down, largest to smallest category. Largest to smallest. You don't have to type them out. Just give me the actual letter that they start with. That'll suffice. Hopefully you developed a system to remember this. It's already been on one test this year. I think of flying a kite. That's a big hint. What? Yes. 6, come on, be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm loading them. Okay, there's the first 3. Decorative kites possess color, order, 4, good sight, right? Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. That works. You can, don't kill puppies because our family gets sad. That's another way to remember it. Very good. Yes, yes. So each species has an ideal structure and function and a place in the scala natura. That's just basically that sequential ladder of life, which we just kind of looked at in the order of classification, domain all the way down to species. And he developed a binomial system of nomenclature, and that's basically genus species. We remember that, right? And if you were to write a scientific name, it would always be italicized, and genus would always be capitalized, and species would always be lowercase. And then there was Count Buffon, a French naturalist. He wrote a 44-volume catalog of all known plants and animals and provided evidence of descent with modification. So this was someone we don't really talk about in general biology, but was huge in influencing the evolutionary thought in natural selection. And he suggested mechanisms including environmental influences, migration, geologic isolation, and the struggle for existence, talking about overpopulation, right? Then looking at selection and finally an adaptation in the end. Did I go too fast? I heard a couple moans. I'll hop back for a second. But if you think back, these are some of those things that influence natural selection, right? Being isolated on an island, being a migratory species where you might end up in a different location based on the weather or climate, okay? Or just having a different variety of you, being bigger, stronger, faster, having webbed toes could be one. Okay. So late 18th century influences were Cuvier, and this scientist was the first to use comparative anatomy. So we talk about embryonic development, looking at the forearms of all vertebrates, things of that nature, to develop a system of classifying animals. And he founded the science of what's called paleontology. We often think of dinosaurs. How many of you have done some type of dinosaur study in your education at one point or another? All right, we'll have to do it just because I can't say I didn't talk about it. I'm not going to study dinosaurs in here, I promise. But it gets beat to death in elementary school, I know. What's your favorite dinosaur? Tell me now. Tell me now. Get it? Let's hear it. Anything prehistoric I'll be okay with. It doesn't necessarily have to be from Triassic or Jurassic. Sorry, not Triassic. Triassic Park. That's not it, right? What is that? Godzilla. Why didn't they name the big new one Godzilla? You had the perfect, it's like a brand new movie was out this last year. You found the giant, dinosaur. Why didn't they call it Godzilla? But wasn't it an herbivore? Yeah. Oh, that's why. Okay. That makes sense. All right, enough fun with dinosaurs. Oh, I'll hop back. Okay, finish it up. Sorry. Velociraptor and the trilobite. You went from the Jurassic back to Precambrian, which is kind of funny. Like before, like the first multicellular existence of like hard-shelled animals. You guys all heard of trilobites, right? No? If not, we'll play with some. We'll try to. All right, let's keep going. I've got pterodactyl. That one, yeah. Godzilla, megalodon. I like the megalodon. The raptor. Raptor and an awesome Ford truck, right? Yep. Okay. Arcteryx? No Arcteryx in there? That thing is brutal, no? It's a bird, yeah. Awesome coat, too. It makes some sweet outdoor gear. Yep, coat. Oh. So then he proposed what's called catastrophism. And local catastrophes in the past had caused Earth's strata to have a new mix of fossils. What if I told you the planet at one time was covered in fungus? Any landmass, I should say. That's crazy, right? That was one of the major extinctions. And how do we know? We've got this huge mica fossil evidence and all this nitrogen in this certain layer of the Earth, which is pretty cool. I can look it up. We'll show you in the fossil record. So after each catastrophe, the region was repopulated by species from surrounding areas. The result of the catastrophes was a change in the appearance over time. So if I were to, let's say, just drop a massive, not a bomb, but like a meteor on the planet, we'll say, and it covered the sunlight for, let's say, 10 years, would that cause a disruption? You bet. What if a volcano went off? That would be the whole planet, right? We're talking a whole planetary change at that point. What if a volcano on, let's say, Hawaii went off and disrupted just North America? Or let's do a better one that will happen eventually. How about Yellowstone? If Yellowstone goes off, that's a supervolcano, we will go into basically a 20-year winter. So what if that happens? And it will only be in like the northern hemisphere. Will that change certain areas of the world drastically? Yeah. And then do you think other animals, after we thaw out, might come migrate up and take over, and now we'll have a new mix of what's here? Yeah. That's evolution. That's all it is, guys. Part of it, I should say. So looking at Lamarck, this guy thought that giraffes' necks would not grow if the trees were lower, but we'll talk about that. He was a little incorrect what he thought. First biologist to propose evolution. His method, or how it happened, was incorrect. He linked diversity with the environmental adaptations. And he concluded that more complex organisms are descended from less complex organisms, which is not always true. And it can happen randomly, but not in the whole population, I guess is the best way to explain that. Has anybody ever seen like Stanley's Superheroes? The show where they've got like the guy that never gets cold and never gets tired, doesn't produce lactic acid, So is that the norm for the human population? No, and because of that, that would not be considered evolution. It'd have to be in all of us, right? And so Lamarck, he said these things were going to just show up from simple organisms. Well, the truth of the matter is you don't really make new alleles, new versions of genes, immediately. You can change them over time, and they can randomly mutate into something new, but they will not change to fit the environment. Lamarck thought they would, and that was his biggest mistake. So he said, if I put a duck in a dry environment, it will not have webbed feet. Well, that doesn't make sense, right? And we know that's not true now. So the proposal of the inheritance of acquired characteristics was known as what's called Lamarckianism. And he had the idea right. Yeah, evolution happens, but the mechanism that he chose was incorrect. Now, Charles Lyell was the next guy. And Earth is subject to slow but continuous cycles of erosion and uplift. And he proposed uniformitarianism. Now, who remembers this term from earth science? Do you? In your own words, what is uniformitarianism? Just tell me. I talked about it a little bit in biology. I did last year, yeah. Not exactly. Let me give it to you in sort of a geology perspective, because it's a geology term. Uniformitarianism states that everything is cyclic and will come back around again, right? The Coriolis effect, all of those things come into play, whether you look at an ocean current coming around in nature, whether you look at a planetary system. Do all do all planetary systems form in basically the same way? And then they'll eventually deteriorate with the sun, and it'll be cyclic, and they'll become stardust, then we make another star, and so on. Earth's the same way. You go to the top of the mountains, and what can you find at the very tippy top of a mountain? I can find fossils of what? Fish, shells, things of that nature. Why? I have plate tectonic plates, right, shoving into each other that are being driven upward that used to be the bottom of a ocean, right? Okay? So eventually the bottom layer is going to get pushed up or pushed down, right, and then melted into lava. One of the two things can happen. You get subduction as well. You guys remember those terms a little bit? Maybe just like, aha, I remember that from Earth Science, hopefully. And so you're looking at uniformitarianism, and he stated that because of this, this is not a fast process. This is not something that just happens overnight. And he said it cannot be, evolution cannot be driven by catastrophes alone. That doesn't make sense. Okay? Let me ask you a question. What is the source of all new alleles? What is the source of all new alleles? The only way you get a new version of a gene, what is it? Come on, guys, be wrong.
Be wrong.
Well, don't try to be wrong, but it's okay to be wrong.
But did you say be wrong?
Yeah. If you're worried about being right, which a lot of students are in this class, just go ahead and type something in. I'm not going to look it up unless it's inappropriate. Okay. We are talking about alleles. Here we go. Here it comes. Mom and Dad. Sad, no. Your mom and dad do not give you new alleles. They give you one of theirs, each of them. Mutations I like. That's the only way you get a new one. Okay. Yes, mutated sex cells. Very true. Yep. Niches. Okay. So mutations is what I was looking for. That's the only way you get a new version of you. It's like a deck of cards. When you get half your mom's deck and half your dad's deck, you put them together and you got a whole deck. You didn't make a new card. You just got a new mixture of like blue and red decks, basically. Okay, so those cards, the only way you get a new card is if a mutation occurs. Something happens to one of those along the way. And mutations do happen at a very predictable rate, but we don't get to choose where they are. And that's that hidden thing in evolution that's kind of unknown. You don't get to choose what mutations show up. Who does get to choose which ones survive, though? Who chooses? Nature, right? Yeah, it's the environment. It's like you either live or you die, or you don't. I'm sorry. You either reproduce or you don't. I could live my whole life and not reproduce, and evolutionarily speaking, my genetics would be dead, right? And that's kind of a weird way to think about it, but really evolution just has to stop you from reproducing to eliminate you from the gene pool. So Lamarck was wrong. He stated that the reason giraffes' necks are longer is because they have to reach up and eat their food. And that if the trees were shorter, that those necks would not grow. That does not make sense to us. We've been to a zoo where they feed them on the ground, right? We know that. We know that they're still going to get long necks. But the thing he was right about is those necks did evolve, and it was the environment choosing little versions of alleles over and over again over many, many, many generations as the foliage was higher and higher and higher when it became more and more scarce, and those trees would get pushed up and up and up, if that makes sense. And the trees would have evolved right with them, right, to grow higher and taller. Only the taller ones survived because the other ones got ate and killed, right? No photosynthesis. So the next part, looking at Darwin's theory of evolution. Geological observations consistent with those of Hutton and Lyell. The biogeography is the study of geographic distribution of the forms on Earth. So now we're going to be looking at the scientists we just talked about and what they contributed to the theory of evolution as Darwin brought all these themes together, so to speak. So where are you? on the planet. Where is life on the planet is biogeography. And he saw similar species in similar habitats and reasoned that the related species could be modified according to the environment. And living forms could be descended from extinct forms known only from the fossil record. Meaning, you didn't just spontaneously get a new creature. It must have had a parent, so to speak, or not a parent, it's an ancestor. Everything has a parent, right? Everything's got a mom and dad. So, I mean, just think about it. Next year, we're not going to get a new frog, right? A frog will have been there, or maybe a new version of a frog that already existed. And it's kind of hard because we as humans cannot think in the perspective of even 1,000,000 years. That's hard. We have a problem with 1,000 years, okay? 5 centuries, just imagine 5 centuries. I have a hard time conceiving what things were like back then. When we talk about the Incans and the Mayans, when were they around? Help me out, historians. Incas and Mayans. How long ago? 3,000 years ago? Is that what you said? That doesn't sound right. 2,000 years ago, that's like the dawn of civilization. Okay, so anything before that is like, I don't know, before that I go straight to cavemen in my brain, you know, like I go to Ice Age. And I know that's really weird because humans evolved like between 3 and 5 million years ago, depending on who you talk to. And so when you start to look at this whole thing in a large perspective, it's hard because we only think of things and we're only taught things in history in like hundreds of, maybe thousands of years. So I have a hard time as even a biologist putting it into perspective. Let me just put this into more of a perspective. Humans and dinosaurs running around together? No, sir. Right? Like humans were not around 5 million years ago. Dinosaurs are 65 million years old. So just imagine the amount of rock between those two. Okay. So Darwin's theory of evolution, biogeography is the study of the range and geographic distribution of life forms on Earth. Darwin compared South American animals to those with which he was familiar with. Instead of rabbits, he found the Patagonian hare in the grasslands of South America. Anybody familiar with Patagonia? The jackets, that's what they're named after, is the mountains, right? Okay. So the Patagonia hare has long legs and ears, but the face of a guinea pig. Goofy looking thing. There is a picture of one in your book. I actually had it in here. I took it out. So the Patagonia hare resembled a rabbit because the two types of animals were adapted to the same type of environment, and both animals ate grass, hid in the bushes, and moved rapidly using long hind legs. So did the Patagonian hare have the face of a guinea pig because of a common descent with guinea pigs? What do you guys think? I'm going to ask you the question, yes or no. I asked you, did the Patagonian hare have the face of a guinea pig because of a common descent with guinea pigs? Oh, there we go. Yes or no? Got 12 of you. Come on now. Be wrong. So let me ask you this question. I'll ask you another one. I'll leave this up here. It's the same answer. Are butterflies and birds related because they both have wings? Now answer the question. Okay. So just because you have a similar trait does not mean you're necessarily related. Does that make sense? Okay. So looking at the Galapagos Islands, what kind of evolution is that called? Do you guys remember from last year? I'll make it really hard. Let me go here. Let's see if you can actually write it in. What type of evolution is that referring to? There's 2 lines crossing or going away. What do we call that? Think about it. If you didn't remember it, it's fine. We're going to go over it later, but what type of evolution would that be? I'm not asking for macro or micro. I'm asking for when 2 traits are crossing, I gotta be careful with my words here, are crossing at a point and they look similar but they have two different origins, just like two different vectors crossing. What do we call that type of evolution? There's a lot of math terms in one sentence. I shouldn't have done that, right? Intersecting vectors. So, I apologize. Bringing the math into biology. Yeah. Come on, I know there's 15 of you out there, 14. I saw at least 14. Be wrong. Type it in. Make something silly but not inappropriate. Let's see what you come up with. 3. Come on. 2. 0.75. 0.5. 0.25.
Let's go.
I don't know. Cross mutations, evolution, a line graph, cross evolution, evolution, nucleu. There it is at the bottom. Convergent evolution, right? If two things converge and have two different origins, that type of evolution is convergent evolution. If they start off at one point and do have a common ancestor, we call that what? Divergence, right? Oh, that's like a show, isn't it, or a movie? I think I watched that the other. Divergent, that's what it was. It's kind of violent, man. Yeah, I know. My daughter read it, and then we watched the movie. I was told to not let my daughter read the second one, but I don't know. I'm pretty liberal when it comes to that. I think I'm okay, as long as she's reading, right? She's 10. Is that too old? Is it? I don't know either. I haven't read it. Too young? Sorry. Too old. I don't know. So the Galapagos Islands, tortoises. Everybody loves tortoises, right? No? No? Tortoises are old. They go like, what, almost 180, 200 years old? So Darwin observed that the tortoise's neck length varied from island to island. And he proposed that speciation on islands correlated with a difference in vegetation. So he said, okay, those are the same tortoise, but those have longer necks than those. And he's like, why? Okay? He asked these questions. Is that how science starts? We ask questions, right? So he's like, why are those necks longer on that island than that island? What do you think? What do you think he found out? I'm going to go ahead and pose the question. What did he find out? For those who have read the chapter like you're supposed to. What did he find out? What did he find out? Why were those necks longer? What conclusion did he come up with? No, we're talking about tortoises right now. We will get to finches momentarily. I think they should call, when a finch bites you, it should not be a peck, it should be a pinch, because then it'd be a finch pinch, right? Yeah. What? I like that. A group of squids is called a squad. That's what I'm calling them. Yes, I know. Isn't that cool? That's why it's a good analogy, actually. It works. Yes. They get about as much done when they get to that. I mean, yeah. All right. The baboons at least are honest. You know, if they don't like somebody, they just throw something at them, right? Okay. So looking at speciation. All right, here we go. Yes, speciation, but why? Different neck lengths due to the type of food. Perfect. Yes, food. And they eat different food, right? Some different location. What is this? Hard time eating tomatoes, so he has to stretch his neck. I like that. The answer is not always science, but yes, usually is. Usually science can answer the question, yes. Or it will eventually. Give it some time. Turtle. Slightly higher. Yep, there you go. I like it. Okay. So that leads into the next one with finches, same reason. Darwin observed many different species of finches on various islands, and basically their difference was their beaks. Okay, it wasn't their long necks. So he speculated that they could have descended from a type of mainland finches. And in fact, you go to the mainland finches that are in South America, and they are kind of a lot of the same type of finch, but then you go to the islands, and it's different versions of that same finch, because the islands on the coast of South America came from South America, and then they floated away. I say floated. They shifted with plate tectonic shifting away, And eventually, because of that drift, eventually the finches were like, oh, I'm just going to fly to South America real quick. I'll be right back. And they never came back. And the ones that said, hey, I'm going to go to the island on vacation for the weekend, they went, and then they never came back to the South America, right? And then they all of a sudden are now isolated, okay? Isolation, remember, geographic isolation, big driving force in evolution. What are birds thinking when they migrate, you know? I mean, I know they're like, oh, I got to go here, but what's in their head? A magnet. It is magnetite, I know, that drives them. But, like, I don't have a magnet so that's like, it's time to go home, you know? Sucks me there. All right. Anyway, that'd be kind of cool. I'm going to go to Florida. Oh, no, I don't need a map. I got magnetite. Yeah. I could get on magnetite for quite a while because there's kind of a cool study they've done with salmon and the white pines and a bunch of other stuff. But oh yeah, it does mess with them. Windmills mess with. There's a lot of things that mess with the migration patterns of birds for sure. Electric power lines. All right, so natural selection and adaptation. Did I tell you guys what I saw a month ago? I don't know if lightning hit the power lines down the road from my house, but there were like 9 birds, and they must have been on that power line when lightning hit it. They had their feet had clenched and held onto the power line and were upside down, deader than a doornail, you know. But their muscles had like locked up, and there was a row of them. It was the nuttiest thing I've ever seen. Like starlings, they were all just like dead. It was crazy. I've been here 36 years, never seen anything so funny. Not funny, but, you know, weird. Yeah. Oops. All right. Oh, that'll do it. Yeah, a lot of power outages are because of squirrel nests. So natural selection and adaptation. Members of populations have inheritable variation. So if I asked you, let me just do this. Let me ask you the 4 steps. Oh, I got to go back. Let me ask you the 4 steps, please, of natural selection. See if you remember them. Number them, 1, 2, 3, 4. Single word for each one. You should know this. This is pretty big for tip of your brain. The frontal, there we go. That's where I was headed. Very good. Not on the brainstem, not on the occipital, the frontal. The frontal cortex of my cranial cavity. It's floating around in the spinal fluid. Wow. You have a dysfunctional synapse? My dendrite has lost its connection. Come on, only 2? Be wrong, it's okay. If you're wrong, that means you didn't know it and you learned something. That makes me happy. How's AP Calc going, Ryan? Oh. No?
You had to say something.
Oh.
It burnt too brightly.
Never mind. I'll ask somebody else. Okay. All right, let's see what's happened. I'm wrong. Wingwardium leviosa. Okay. That's off of Harriet Potter. Yeah. What is that? No, that's the levitating spell, right? Okay. All right. So that's when you know you've watched too many Harry Potter shows. Overproduction, variation, selection. Oh, survival. Who? No, I won't say who. Okay, those are a little out of order. I'm not going to go with those. No, high biodiversity. Come on now. Uh-oh. No one had the perfect answer. That's good. We all gonna learn something. Well, well, this is right, but minus the lather, rinse, repeat. That's the directions on the back of my shampoo. All right, I think. Well, not repeat. That'd be silly. You never leave the shower. You just keep going and loop. All right. So it looks like overproduction, yes. Make more than can possibly survive. Variation. Within them, there's going to be a lot of biodiversity, a lot of variation. Nature's going to select which ones are going to reproduce, not necessarily survive, just reproduce and have offspring. And then an adaptation, a predominant population trait or gene or allele is going to be predominant, and then lo and behold, you have evolution, natural selection in action. So more individuals are produced in each generation than the environment can support. That's our overpopulation. Some individuals have adaptive characteristics, lots of biodiversity, variations, and favorable traits that result in increased survival and reproduction are known as selection. So natural selection can result in a population adaptation. So that's where it's adapted to its local environment. That's where the last part of that adaptation shows up. So if I were looking at the two tortoises, the different size neck would be that adaptation that the environment chose. Does it have to be a new allele? No, it can be an existing allele that's chosen over others in one population. So an increase in proportion of succeeding generations will have favorable characteristics. You guys know we're getting taller as a population? Yeah. Where our brains are also getting bigger. We're using them more, right? That makes sense. Okay. I know well, in America we are anyway. America. Well, I mean, we compare us to like the ISIS group, we're doing a lot better, right? Yeah. I think we're a little smarter than them. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with that. What? I wish. We wouldn't have that problem. Yeah. So the theory of evolution. I'm not going into that one anymore. I'm recording this. So Darwin emphasized that individuals from a population vary in their functional characteristics, physical characteristics, and behavioral characteristics. I don't have any problem being proud of my country. It's okay, right? Well, that's not. So he proposed that these variations occur randomly. This is all going to be on the video, you guys. And then I'm going to have to talk to your parents and play on the video and be like, listen to what your kid said during class.
I don't think my parents would care.
Okay. So these are essential to the natural selection process, and they allow adaptation to the environment over time. It's those variations. When I say variation, do I mean necessarily a new one? What do I mean when I say, let me ask you, what do I mean when I say variation? Please tell me. What, in your own words, when I say variation, what am I referring to? Let me give you an example. I'll give you an illustrative example. Men will live, let's say 85 years. Well, that's not the male average life expectancy. It's around 80. Females is around 85. Okay, so male, let's say we're going to live 80 years. Men, you will live 80 years. Let's multiply that by 365 days. I don't have my calculator out, and I'm too lazy to do it in my head right now. Type it into Chrome. 80 times 365. 29,200 days. And every day you're going to make 4 million sperm. Multiply it by 4 million. It's a big number, right?
116,800,000,000.
So billions of billions, right? Okay. So you'll never make the same one twice. It's mathematically impossible. Okay? Well, it's mathematically improbable, let's say that. Like statistics deny that it will occur. All right? So now, what am I talking about when I talk about variation? Notice I didn't talk about making anything new, did I? I talked about differences. Nope, sorry guys, nope. We're going to wait on our break. We'll take it in a minute. I want to get through at least section 2 here. See what we came up with. Okay, differences. A different, ooh, I like that one. Can't tell you. I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, varieties, yep. So, of these, I didn't go all the way to the bottom. Uh-oh. So it looks like, okay, that's part of it, yep. That's what causes it, the crossing over of the alleles. That's part of it. It's not all of it, though, right? Oh, yep. So I like that you guys are thinking genetics here, because when we talk about crossing over, if you're listening to this recording, Mr. B is playing his very bad music on Fridays. So actually, this is a pretty good one. This is Creedence Clearwater. That's okay. So I'm going to let it finish here, maybe. It's going to be a while, isn't it? Okay. We'll keep going. So looking at biodiversity in an ecosystem, how does that happen? It happens through crossing over, but it also happens through the laws of independent assortment, right? The laws of segregation. All of those things that when men go through meiosis and spermatogenesis, they make all these new combinations. Females do it too. It's just they only do it basically in a short period of their life. They make like 300,000 to 400,000 eggs, and then they carry those around their whole life. And that's really the only reason why females don't have more of them or more a variety of them to pass on. All right. So I like the different combinations of alleles. I don't know where that was. I have to go find it. So the different order of alleles fit for survival and reproduction. That's a good answer. I like that. Good. That's a good one. So remember, I don't necessarily have to make something new. All right? So he knew that these variations occur randomly. Men do not choose what alleles go in which gametes. Females don't choose which alleles go in their gametes either. This is essential, though, to have natural selection occur. Without these variations, you don't have anything to choose from. Now, allowing adaptation in the environment, this has to occur over time. This is not something that's going to happen in one generation. Okay? It's like me expecting humans to have a bigger brain in one generation. Well, yeah, you get a different version of you in one generation, but it's going to take hundreds, sometimes thousands, sometimes millions of generations to start to see that evidence. So why is it that bacteria can evolve in like a week? Yes?
Because they go through those billions of generations in that time period.
Yeah, one bacteria the next day can be billions of millions, literally. Think about that, generations. Now humans, we reproduce like, you know, maybe if you just think about it, yeah, like probably, let's just put it in a 50-year block. So like twice every 100 years, we'll say, really, for a human. And now, rewind our clock, we're only, 3 to 5 million years old. Think about how much farther evolved bacteria are than us, okay? Which is kind of goofy to think about. They're way better adapted. That's why they're still here. Whether we'll be here or not, it still remains to be seen, right? Yeah, because they overpopulate, have a lot of variation. Selection can choose what it wants out of that huge population. Yeah. Yep. Well, we are. That's part of their evolution. They're surviving just like, we are. We don't want them to sometimes, but without bacteria, I've got a giant yeast infection in my mouth. So there is good bacteria, right? Think about it. You don't want thrush. That's what it is. But I've got this bacteria that's also found in yogurt that lives in my mouth and eats it for me. So I've got E. coli in my lower gut that breaks down the milk I drink. I can't break down lactose without that being there. Okay? Yeah. We do. There is more bacterial DNA in your body than there is your own. That's creepy just to think about, right? In your mouth, just your mouth has more DNA than all of your cells combined. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. There are over 400 million different types of bacteria in the average human mouth, and they all colonize together. It's called quorum sensing, and they come together to form a community called plaque. Yeah, it's crazy, right? So there's a whole ecosystem in your mouth alone. Strange. Yeah. Makes sharing chapstick a really awkward endeavor once you know that. It's like, I don't want your community in my community. You know? So fitness is the relative reproductive success of an individual. How fit are you? How well are you adapted? How are your alleles, basically? What is your allele combination, right? So the most fit individuals in a population capture a disproportionate share of the goodies. Yes, the goodies is my term. I put that in there.
Is that a scientific term?
No, that's the only scientific word, that non-scientific word I use today, I promise.
What?
The goodies. So the interaction with the environment determine which individuals reproduce the most. When I say the word goodies, what am I referring to? When I say goodies, what am I referring to? I purposefully put that word in there so I would remember to ask you this question.
I don't remember.
When I say the word goodies, what am I referring to? Two responses. Kayla, keep him under control, please. All right. Sure, what is the swag of evolution? Call it whatever you want. What are we referring to when we say the goodies? Oh no, I'm scared. Remember, if it's not appropriate, I'm going to have to look you up, and I will do it on YouTube. And okay, all right. Actually, I can't do it on YouTube. I wouldn't be able to look you up on YouTube. I'd have to do it later, but I will. Let's see what you came up with. I don't want to see alleles. Where's alleles? Oh, okay. Food, shelter. Okay. Song by Sierra. Is that a song? Maybe I didn't. This is how old I am. I don't even know the names of these songs. Is that Sierra? Sierra? I spell my daughter Sierra, S-I-E-R-R-A. Goodies. The best, most helpful traits, yes. Alleles, genes, okay. Versions of genes, alleles. Halloween candy, genes, snacks, the goodies. Genes, Halloween candy, go to the top. Yogi, the supersonic government bear, or alleles, yes, okay. If you're watching this video, we learned yesterday that there was a bear that they shot out of a jet to test the ejection seats for pilots, which is unbelievable. So, interactions with the environment determine which individuals reproduce the most. And remember, adaptation is the change that helps a species become more suited to its environment. It is the product, the end product of natural selection. If I ask you for the product of natural selection, you should tell me it is the adaptations. That's the fourth part of natural selection. First part, overpopulation, lots of variation in biodiversity, selection occurs, and you end up with an adaptation. So then, of course, we can manipulate this whole process. It's called artificial selection. This is where a breeder chooses which traits to perpetuate and selects the plants and animals that will reproduce. All dogs we know are descendants of the gray wolf. This is one example we actually saw within the human timeline. It's kind of cool. It's a big mammal, and you're like, oh, look, it can happen. Now, I know we forced it to happen by artificially selecting it, but if selection can cause a whole population to change species almost, then nature could do it too. So all dogs are from the gray wolf. It began to be domesticated about 14,000 years ago. That's where we have record of it. And the process of diversification led to extreme phenotypic differences. What is a phenotype? See if you guys remember. What's a phenotype? What is a phenotype? What's a phenotype? What is a phenotype? See what we came up with here. Physical appearance of a genotype. It is the physical appearance, yes. What else do we have? What shows? Yep. What shows? Visual representation of a gene. Yep. Okay. I would say it's the transcribed and translated allele, right? No. Express traits. Yes. Gene expression. Very good. The genes that are expressed. Oh, where am I now? Oh, the wolves under domestication were separated from other wolves, and each human tribe selected whatever traits appealed to them. So these tribes would take in these wolves. Now, you don't just take in a wolf, right? It's like, it doesn't work out all the time. So the wolves they would take in were the ones that were not the alpha wolf, right? Not even the omega. I mean, we're talking the lowest, not the lowest, but that middle one that's called the joker of the group. The one that, it's like the middle child in the wolf family. The one that kind of will let others maybe not beat them up, but not abuse them, but won't like bite back. And they just want to keep the peace in the group. We have those. I'm one of those. I'm a middle child. I was always the one that kind of was like, hey, let's not fight. We got to quit arguing. Let's just get along. Can't we all just get along? That's that wolf. So that's who they would take in. And then they'd be like, well, I don't want him to be that big. He's too big for my teepee or whatever. And so we got to make them small. And they would breed them, and they would inbreed them until they got the traits they wanted. And eventually, you end up with some really mutated individual like the pug, right? And you look at that, and you're like, well, that shouldn't have existed. But it did, right? And so the pug is obviously a very mutated version of a dog, all right? Those are mutations that were chosen. What is the driving force behind evolution? And differences in alleles? Mutation, right? So we forced mutations to happen. And then we chose those mutations to survive. Would nature have ever chose a pug to survive in a wolf pack? No. So it's definitely artificial selection. Pug can run across the room, has to stop and catch his breath because its nasal cavity is so mutated, right? That's what they do, right? You ever see them? Looks like they ran into a window permanently. My sister-in-law had one of those things. I just looked at it like, you are not right, dog. Didn't look at me, and it looked like its head was against the window. And it's like a mime, It's permanently. Yeah. So obviously, you get to a Buster. These are all from the same descendant, which is really interesting. When you think about starting off here and ending here and here, even over a few thousand years, they were able to get those differences. So, just thinking about your dog at home, they all came from this guy right here. I got a Burmese mountain dog. I don't know how they came up with that. I don't know what mutation must have happened in this gray wolf to give me a Burmese mountain dog. I don't know. Yeah, like the Chihuahua. Like when that thing came out, it was like, I want that. The hairless rat dog. I want that. Yeah, I know. If I'm offending your dog, I'm sorry. My daughter embarrassed me the other day because I call those dogs rats, and she said that to the lady whose dog was out. She's like, she goes, that's not a dog, Dad, that's a rat. And I was like, shh, you're gonna get me in trouble. It's okay to have rats as pets. So the following vegetables are derived from a single species, Brassica oleracea. Now, what if I told you that all cabbages, all Brussels sprouts, all cauliflower, all broccoli came from the same mustard plant? Close, yeah. You guys would think I'm nuts, right? No, they bred them. No, they artificially selected them. So Darwin described artificial selection as a model by which to understand natural selection. The Asian countries took it and made broccoli, bred broccoli. Ugh, say that 10 times real fast. Bred broccoli. Imagine broccoli in your bread. Ew. So, okay, then you got cauliflower. That was the Italians. Then you've got Brussels sprouts, Germans, obviously. Shorter growing season, smaller plant, right? So these all came from wild mustard. Strange. And even more of a selection, they took that and then they bred it in their area to what grew best there. We do that in America too. No different. We took Indian corn, we made corn, right? Well, it's not genetically modified, but in a way, it's genetically selected, right? So in a way, kind of. But we don't put a gene from one organism into it. That's a different topic. We'll talk about biotech too. So his theory of evolution, it was that natural selection was the driving force, and the observation of tortoises and finches on the Galapagos Islands supported that idea. What's the one thing Darwin didn't understand or know about, though? What didn't he know? It is very ironic where the answer came from, if you think about it. The man who has the most controversial idea in biology, the driving force behind his idea came from, let's see if you guys got it, genome sequence, yep, genetics, right? And who was the father of genetics? Gregor Mendel, the monk. So it's so funny, it's ironic. It just cracks me up. Like the thing that actually supports the theory is discovered by a monk. So each of the 13 species of Galapagos finches has a beak adapted to a particular way of life. A heavy beak, we know, and we've learned this in biology, this is nothing new. The heavy beak is suited for a diet of large seeds, like nuts, right? The beak of the warbler finch is suited to feeding on insects, so it's a little tiny pecker that just pecks insects off the ground, like little ants. Just think about little ants, just peck, 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 peck. And a longer, somewhat decurved beak and a split tongue of the cactus finch are suited for probing a cactus for seeds. So they stick their tongue in and fish it out. And there are the three finches there. Big old beak for cracking nuts open, little tiny beak for pecking, and then we've got the cactus finch, and there's a long tongue in there we can't see that reaches in and can dig out things in a cactus. A little bit, yeah. That's creepy, right? So Peter and Rosemary Grant are observing natural selection as it occurs in finches on Daphne Major. The beak, that's one of the islands. The beak size of the median ground finch adapts to the weather. Other observations of natural selection are changes in the shells of marine snails due to hunting by crabs. Changes in the beak length of the scarlet honeycreeper due to a new food source, so changing based on your diet. Industrial melanism, that's the peppered moth. You guys remember doing the peppered moth activity last year? Remember the industrialization caused the bark of the trees to change, and then some selection occurred towards the darker moths. Now they're becoming lighter again as the industrialism goes away. And then, of course, our bacterial resistance and antibiotics. So we've heard about that, like MRSA, right? Now, we will do a lab in here with biotech at the same time where we genetically engineer E. coli to glow in the dark, but to also be antibiotic resistant, which will be our focus in that lab. Okay. So if you haven't taken biotech, you'll still get to kind of participate in some of the labs because we have the same requirements in this class. So I kind of piggyback off of those a little bit. What? Now we'll get there. We're almost done. So looking at this chart, you might see a chart like this, even on the AP exam, looking at the different seasons. In a dry year, the beak size gets bigger and goes up because they have to crack harder, more dense nuts. In the soft years, the nuts are softer, the seeds are softer, the shells are softer, so they don't need as big of a beak. So they'll fluctuate. Just like that predator-prey relationship that we've seen before, it'll adjust with the moisture levels of that particular year. A little bit, but now we're talking about, it's not really coevolution because we're talking about the weather, you know what I mean? Yeah, so it is evolution, but not coevolution. We will stop here. And tomorrow we'll finish, or Monday, tomorrow we'll be here, you guys don't forget, Saturday school, right? Okay. Let's see if I can get this shut down.